And welcome, welcome, welcome. This is Peter Winick. I'm the founder and CEO of Thought Leadership Leverage. And today you are joining us on our podcast, Leveraging Thought Leadership, with Dan Gerstein as my guest. Dan is interesting, amazing guy. Dan is currently the founder and CEO of Gotham Ghostwriters, probably the best ghostwriting agency in the US, if not the globe. We've worked together for a long time on several different projects. Dan's formerly a political strategist, political speechwriter, Harvard Business School grad. What else can I say about Dan? He's been on the Hill. He's been a contributing columnist at the Wall Street Journal and Politico, Fox News, CNN, NBC, a New Yorker that's a Red Sox fan, so we won't hold that against him, and an all-around good guy. So thanks for joining us today, Dan.
Thanks for having me, Peter. I just have to correct it. I'm Harvard undergrad, not B school, so I know that will diminish my value to your audience by 50%, but I had to be transparent about that.
Probably 80%. Okay, so Dan's not as smart as I originally thought, so I apologize to everybody for that, but hopefully he can make up for it today.
I'll do my best.
Okay. I thought you were going to apologize for being a Red Sox fan, but probably not. So, Dan, tell us about Gotham. So you've got a really interesting organization at Gotham Ghostwriters. So just tell me, and not from a self-promotional perspective, but the need it serves in the market, types of folks that you work with, and what's the special sauce at Gotham Ghostwriters?
Sure. So, I've been writing professionally since I was 18, and I'm a big believer in the value of writers in writing. In recent years, I've been seeing growing demand for really skilled content creation, particularly storytelling, long-form storytelling, and particularly in the thought leadership and business and public affairs arena. And there's this amazing universe of writers out there, but there was a problem in the marketplace. There was all this demand and all this supply, but they couldn't find each other. And my idea in forming Gotham Ghostwriters was to try and bridge that gap, solve for that market failure, and be in a position to help thought leaders connect with this really amazing pool of freelancers out there. But it's hard to navigate and penetrate from the outside. So we've created the largest network of freelance writers in the country, who specialize particularly in long-form content, and a lot of them in thought leadership. And it really puts us in a unique position to be able to do customized matchmaking and not just recommend a ghostwriter given assignment, but multiple writers who have experience in the genre and a knowledge base in the subject matter. So we're taking all the hassle and most of the risk out of the equation of searching for a really skilled and well-matched writing partner. It's one of those rare opportunities in business where you're creating value by bringing people together rather than pitting them against each other.
Got it. So what I find fascinating, because you and I have worked together on several projects over the last several years, and they've been fun projects, interesting projects, and things that I've learned a lot from, is that, in many instances, the intermediary's been blown out because of the internet. And I think in your world, as an intermediary, as a matchmaker, if you will, you're even more valuable now, right? Because unlike certain service providers, if I was looking for a plumber or I don't know, somebody more technical, somebody to build me a website or something like that, it's probably easier to vet and find somebody out in terms of their references, the type of work they've done, see if we're a fit. So much of the relationship piece of a ghostwriter and the author is sort of intangible. Can you touch on sort of the qualifications? Obviously, they if somebody's written multiple New York Times bestsellers and worked with a Fortune 500 CEO before, you can sort of check that box. But I think part of your special sauce is sort of figuring out the qualitative element. So could you talk about that?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And the main thing I learned when I started experimenting with this model was that as good a judge of talent as I am, creative and smart connector, the one thing I couldn't account for was chemistry. How an author and a writer, or a speaker and a speechwriter would click together. And the reality is, in a collaborative writing relationship, particularly when you're writing in someone else's voice, the relationship matters as much, if not more so, and the connectivity matters as much so
Hmm.
than skills and experience of the writer, because in so much of the work that you're doing with a book author or a speaker or a thought leader who's writing blog content or white papers, it's very trust dependent, and you're serving as a sounding board, a validator, and to some degree a therapist. And it's a very intimate relationship. It's, I guess, the best way to sum it up. And it's very trust dependent. A lot of, whether it's a CEO, tech entrepreneur, leader of an advocacy organization, in many cases, they're putting their life's work and their life's reputation in the hands of the writer they're working with.
And I
They
think
have to
trust is key, because oftentimes things that come out in a book or during the book writing process for an author or a thought leader are somewhat painful in some instances. It's
Yes.
obviously to talk about all the great things that you've done, but the marks of a great book are also being transparent and authentic about some of the bad things, not bad, but mistakes that you've made, or things that you're less than proud of, or things that you didn't accomplish that you wouldn't have accomplished. And oftentimes CEOs are not used to talking and being that transparent and vulnerable. Let me ask you this, Dan. Many of our folks out there today are authors and thought leaders and speakers, and are going to be looking for a ghostwriter. Talk about it from the perspective of their perspective, what they should be looking for and what they should pay less attention to in that selection process.
Great question. And again, going back to your point about our secret sauce and why we're bringing conversation is, we can anticipate and think about the relationship and how two individuals are going to mesh in a way that the author probably never even thought of.
Right, right.
And so one of the first things we talk to them about when we start working with them is, to recognize that the skills and credentials and talents of the writer are important, but that's a starting point. And they should be thinking critically about work styles, right? So if you are an author and you are super busy and you need to be very efficient in your interactions, right? You have limited time every week to deal with a writer. You're going to need someone who's disciplined and responsive and respectful of your time. That's the kind of thing to kind of talk about before making a hire, before signing a contract, investing money. Another example is, if you like to be challenged, right? You want more than just a writing partner. You want an intellectual sparring partner, and someone who's going to push you and contribute and, be your Ted Sorensen to JFK. In that case, then personality is going to matter a lot. And you should be thinking about, does this writer have a thick skin? Will they stand up to me? Will they challenge me? And if they're not going to, then that might not be a very satisfying relationship.
Got it. Right. They're not, a good ghost is not a scribe. A good ghost is that sparring partner, is that someone that will challenge you and take you to the next level and call BS and force you to think about things a little bit differently.
That's right. And at the same time, be respectful of the fact that at the end of the day, they're working for you as well as with you. And it's your book or it's your speech. And they have to be willing and able to sublimate their ego and whatever they think is, if they've presented their case and their argument. It's sort of like being, when you're a speechwriter of the president, you can, great speechwriters will push them and sort of advocate for a point of view or an argument. But at the end of the day, when the president sort of says, no, I want to say this, you say, yes, sir.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. So let me sort of ask you a question a little bit differently, Dan. So here I am. I'm an author. I'm a speaker. I'm a CEO. I'm a thought leader. I can crack this book thing. How tough can this be? I've never written a book before. I'm fairly smart. I write my own speeches. I do a little bit of writing here and there. Why would I need a ghostwriter? And are they all the same, or are there different levels? Talk to me about why I would even need one and sort of what the variations on the spectrum are.
Right. So on the first question, why you need one, I would say it usually will come down to sort of one of two factors, and sometimes both: time or talent. Right. In many cases, thought leaders are not as skilled as they are in producing their ideas, and maybe even presenting in public in the written form. Right. And having someone who is able
Okay.
to take their ideas and present them in the best version of the thinker's voice, uh, and is something that can be very, very valuable.
So you could be smart, but just not necessarily have the domain expertise of the written word, right? Is that a fair?
Or the confidence to do it on your own, right? And that's definitely a situation that arises frequently.
Hmm.
Whereas it's not necessarily they're a bad writer, but they don't trust their skills, and they don't feel they can do it on their own, so they want to work with a partner. The other
Okay.
factor is time, right? A lot, the more of a high profile, in demand thought leader you are, the less time you have to devote to not just do the writing, but to the intellectual spade work that's necessary to construct a speech.
So is that would you say the structure, the processes, a forcing mechanism of having a partner to hold you accountable uh, helps with the time issue? Because it's very rare that you meet someone that just wrote a book and they say it took me less time, energy, and effort than I thought, and I got it done quicker and cheaper and all that. Right? It's usually, unfortunately, quite the opposite.
Yeah, absolutely. So that is often an added bonus for a number of the clients we work with, and in some cases, it's the primary problem and need of the author is that they technically have the time, and they're a solid writer,
Right?
but they need someone to hold them accountable, and to some degree to coach them on the process, right? To help them thinking through what's the narrative arc of the book, how are you going to structure the chapters, and
Got
then
it.
once they have that roadmap, and then someone to sort of say, hey, here's our schedule for production, some of these authors are quite capable of, working on their own with
Sure. Sure.
that, coach looking over their shoulder and the game plan to follow.
Got it. So talk to me then about the other piece of the question in terms of different levels. So I know from my experience there are authors who are not writers, and I don't mean that in a disrespectful way, but that's not their modality, that's not where they're comfortable, but it's their idea, it's their voice, it's their content, but their way of interacting might be sending audio files over to someone with various ideas. So give me the sort of different levels or different I guess levels is probably the best way to put it, of
Yeah.
ghostwriters that there are and the purposes that they serve.
Right. So, I would think about it like there's a spectrum of collaborative writing relationships. On the one extreme,
Okay.
there's an author who says, I have 5 principles of leadership. Here they are. Write me a book. Right. And then on the
Okay.
other extreme, there are authors who are ready to write the book themselves, and
Mm-hmm.
they need less of a ghostwriter or even a writing partner, and more of a coach, who will help them on the front end, the construction, like we just talked about, and then maybe edit and polish the chapters after the author has kind of done first drafts. And then there's variations in between. But I think the key thing for authors who are kind of weighing working with the writer is the very first question we always ask: what's the goal of the book, right? So what do you want to accomplish? That has to be established from the beginning,
Yep. Yep.
or there's a high risk of failure. But then,
But you've just added a third dimension to the process. So up until now, we've had talent, which was sort of a check the box, although we don't take
yep,
that lightly. Then there was style, right, in terms of the match, and now
that's
there's
exactly right.
sort of function, if you will, right? Is that person going to be the true partner, the coach? So that's a three-dimensional game of chess. That makes it exponentially harder, I would think.
Yeah, to some degree, but I think again, the way you get clarity on that is, and that's the second question we will ask after we establish what the goal of the project is what's your need, right? So, if you're coming to our agency or you're seeking to work with a writer, you have a pain point. There's some problem you need a solution for.
Mm-hmm.
Being able to kind of define that problem as it relates to you, not just being vague, I need a writer, and getting some clarity about what you feel is going to be the best kind of partner for you and what role you want them to play, is very, very beneficial, and it certainly makes our job a lot easier in kind of recruiting someone who has the skill set and the experience that aligns with the client's need.
But would you say, or would you agree that oftentimes there's a lack of self-awareness, meaning, hey, I'm smart, I can do lots of things, I can run a billion-dollar company. Again, I can write the book, and then they try it on their own, and it takes a long time. They're in pain, and they come to you 6 months, 9 months later, where they've barely made any progress, but put a lot of energy and effort in. How would you prevent that situation, or what would you recommend to folks that think I can do this entire thing on my own?
Um, well, I would say, it's funny because, we see everyone on that spectrum, from the people who like just recognize flat off, I need a writer. And it's very, they've made that judgment very quickly. And then there's the people who go through that painful process of trying it on their own and then failing and being frustrated. And they get to that point.
Right.
I would say that, you have to think of the book as, starting a pop-up business, and you're creating a product. And are you prepared to invest the time and energy to be the CEO of this pop-up business, as well as, the chief product officer?
Mm-hmm.
And a useful exercise is, to some degree, is first coming up with a business plan for the book, right? And then secondly, developing a synopsis or an outline. And if you can go through that process and you feel good about it, and then you have something that you're happy with, that's probably a good sign that you can take the next step and try and write some chapters on your own. But if you're going through that process and you're getting frustrated or you're not sure, that's usually an indication that you're probably going to be better off having some help, especially if you keep putting it off, right? You have people telling you want to write a book, you say, I'm going to do it. But, when you're in that cycle of avoidance, that's usually a sign that you're better off bringing in someone to kind of help you get over that hump. And then you can figure out sort of whether you want them to play that purely that coach advisor role, or you really want them to be a writing partner and take the lead on the drafting, the outline and all the chapters.
I think we just got a good book title there, Cycle of Avoidance. I'm going to go register that. So let me ask you, you mentioned the book as sort of the CEO of this business. It's a product, pop-up business, et cetera. My experience is the book often becomes, because it's deadline focused and there's other dependencies and all that sort of stuff, the tail that wags the dog, right? And it's very, very few instances where the book is the business and the product, period, full stop, right? The book, to me, is part of a platform that has to be larger than the book and has to be thinking in more broadly around what you're trying to say, what you're trying to get out there, and more importantly, what the underlying business is. Could you talk about sort of the relationship between book, platform, strategy, all that other fun stuff?
Yeah, it's a great point, and I don't think they're in any way in conflict. I would just say that the baseline is, if you're doing a book, you're creating a product, and you have to approach it that way. But then it goes back to that larger question of what's your goal for the book. If you have a story you want to tell and you want to document it, and that's it, then you don't necessarily have to think that much about the question of platform or what the book is. What's the end that the book is a means to.
But that would be the case where I need to get this story out. I need to tell this.
That's right. So there are going to be some cases like that, but in a lot of cases, particularly with the thought leadership clients that we're typically working with, the book is a means to an end, right? It's a means to credential yourself as an expert in your field. It's an opportunity to create more of a platform to get speaking engagements and share your expertise in audiences around not just the country, the world. And then even it's an opportunity to expose people to your business and your services so that you can create more of a funnel for your business and even productize the ideas that you're putting out there in the book. And in cases like that, then I think it's really important to see the product, the book as a product, as part of a larger business plan and a part of a cycle. And then you have to think about ahead of time, sort of, okay, what do I need to do to maximize the impact of the book? And that goes to the whole question of platform, which I think a lot of people, it's a step they skip. They will go right to writing the book without thinking about sort of, okay, what can I do to get my ideas out there, get more credible, get more visible, so that when the book.
Well, they skip it, or oftentimes what I'll see from my end is they do it out of sequence. They do, they sort of flip the linearness of it, if you will. Let's do the book, and then I'll figure out my platform, and then I'll figure out my business. It's like, no. Platform first, right? Strategy, platform first, book and other. There could be lots of other, and then those two are overlapping and connected, right?
That's
Because
right.
one has to support the other. That you can't do those things in isolation.
I think that's a partially a reflection of a lingering yet outdated line of thinking, which is you have to hold your ideas of the book in very, very closely until you release the book, right? You don't want to give away the milk for free.
Yeah.
And
Right.
you want to maximize the impact of the book by having it be new and fresh. That worked pre-internet, but now that everything is visible, and it's all about connecting
Right.
with an
Right.
audience and engagement on social media and building a connection and a community. It's the opposite now is actually true. You're better off sharing your ideas in chunked form, digestible form, and to some degree even road testing your ideas and your stories
Mm-hmm.
before you package them up in a book, because it does kills two birds with one stone. It helps you build an audience, build interest in you, build credibility, and at the same time sharpen your thinking
Right.
by testing some, doing some beta testing of your ideas and getting feedback, so that when you put it all together in this, the synthesis of the book, it's the best version of your thinking.
When I have found there's two things to test: the what and the who, right? So you've got the content, the what. This is what I'm talking about. So you can throw those concepts out there in bite-sized forms, blogs, short form video, etc. See what resonates or see what people might like to tweak on it a bit. And then there's the who, right? Who is this going to resonate with the most in order for me to serve a tribe well and build a community that has a need? So oftentimes it's interesting. You nail the what, but the application or the who is not exactly what you thought. And I love the idea of testing, because once a book is done, that's a big commitment, a big investment of time, money, energy, effort, and it's done, right? You're not going to go and revise it after the fact. Great. So let me, as we start to run the clock here, running out of time here, give three tips. So I'm out there right now. Somebody listening, we hope, is it's their first foray into writing a book. They think they know what they have to say. They've got some great experience. They're a real thought leader. There's gravitas, there's experience, there's research, etc. behind it. What should they be thinking about before they sort of dive into authorship?
First and foremost is know your goal, right? Why are you doing this? Why are you going to invest time, money, blood, sweat, and tears into producing a book? Because it's a major, major investment, even if you're hiring someone to help you write. The second thing is, and related to hiring, is you got to know your budget, right? So what resources are you willing to commit to, whether it's hiring a writer, hiring someone to help you do PR and marketing,
Mm-hmm.
if you're going to pursue non-traditional publishing, investing in a custom publishing platform. Again, this relates back to being a pop-up business. You got to know, as part of your business plan, what you're willing to invest in the success of your book. And then the third thing I would say is you have to, once you've established your goal and your budget, to know your publishing path, right? To have a firm sense of, okay, right, what's the best
Mm-hmm.
platform for me to get my book, get the impact out of my book that I want, right? And it used to be pretty cut and dry. You went to traditional publishing unless you couldn't get a deal, and your only recourse was what they called vanity publishing, right? That world is no longer
Mm-hmm.
in existence. The rise of really high level, sophisticated custom publishing, hybrid publishers, which often create all kinds of opportunities for authors who want to work on their own schedule, often work more quickly than traditional publishing, and publish on their own terms, so they don't have to pass through a third-party
Sure.
gatekeeper. So knowing what your objective is then allows you to kind of think strategically about, okay, there's certain pros and cons to traditional publishing, there's certain pros and cons to custom publishing. Going through that checklist and kind of figuring out, okay, which solution is best for my needs and priorities.
Great, well said. So, lastly, as we wrap up, and I think we can do a whole nother show on just the state of publishing from the perspective
Don't
of
get me
the
started.
author, not from the business perspective, but because it's not that black. Yeah, exactly. It's it's pros and cons and pluses and minuses, and there's not a one size fits all. But I think that's a subject for another day. So, as we start to conclude here, how do I find you, Dan? I know how to find you, but how do other folks get in touch with you, and who should be calling you, and when should they call you, and all that other fun stuff?
Our website is www.gothamghostwriters.com. You can reach me at dan@gothamghostwriters.com. Anyone who has a story to tell and wants to project their thought leadership out there, and they're not sure how to do it, whether they need a writer, whether they need an editor, they just want to get a sense of how the publishing industry works. We welcome having those conversations, and our goal is to be a resource for a lot of people who need help telling and selling their stories. And there's lots of different ways we can engage with our clients. So we always offer a free consultation to kind of learn more about the client's needs and offer different opportunities for us to engage in different ways we might be helpful, and take it from there.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time. This was packed full of lots of information, particularly on the ghostwriting perspective as well as the platform perspective. So lots of stuff here. Appreciate your time, Dan, and appreciate your insight. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, Peter. Glad to be with you.
To learn more about Thought Leadership Leverage, please visit our website at thoughtleadershipleverage.com. To reach me directly, feel free to email me at peter@thoughtleadershipleverage.com. And please subscribe to Leveraging Thought Leadership on iTunes or your favorite podcast app to get your weekly episode automatically.